This is a video idea I've had bouncing around for a while, but honestly I was worried it's a bit too obvious. In the wake of the new God of War reboot, however, I've seen a lot of takes that gloss over, ignore, or seemingly are unaware of the cool stuff the old God of War games did. At worst, this video will be a send-up to that awesome history. God of War over time has gotten a reputation for being a simplistic and childish series, and honestly it's not entirely undeserved. That's ended up either overshadowing or distorting one of the franchise's biggest strengths. It knows it's a video game. God of War popularized QuickTime events, which became a defining part of its era, but it's used its regular gameplay in a lot of creative ways too. The most obvious is probably its cinematic feel. That phrase has deservedly gotten a bad reputation, but God of War was different sometimes. More often than not, they didn't take your control away during highly choreographed scenes. Instead, control remains in your hands and you have to adapt to changing situations. More often than not, you have to at least do a QuickTime event to prove that you haven't put down the controller. Even basics like opening doors and chests required more advanced input than your usual game. And this wasn't done carelessly. It created an automatic barrier that forced Kratos to deal with enemies or other obstacles before he could move on, since he'd always get hit before completing the action. I can't say for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's also masking some loading screens, since the game's transitions from area to area are always seamless. But this is all pretty average stuff, not super exciting. That's just the surface though. God of War makes pretty creative use of its mechanics all throughout, and it goes beyond what you might expect from an average hack and slash. For example, God of War 2 has Kratos start off with maxed out health and magic, like he would have when he finished the original game. His blades are at max level too, and he has a spell from the original game, Poseidon's Rage. But during the first boss fight, he slowly sacrifices all this power to gain the Blade of Olympus, the only weapon that can damage the Colossus he has to fight. You don't even get Poseidon's Rage back, but rather Kratos gains entirely new magic throughout the game. So that's a bit cooler. But the coolest part of God of War is when it inverts itself. The games are brutal throughout the majority of their runtime, but turn these harsh mechanics on their head in creative ways. For example, the first God of War ends with Kratos trapped in a vision of the time he was tricked into killing his family. As a representation of his guilt, a bunch of monstrous Kratoses come wave after wave and try and kill his family, using Kratos' various abilities that he's gained throughout the game. It's a pretty standard mission type. You just have to keep the family's health from reaching zero, or else Kratos fails. What makes it unique is what Kratos does when you use the grab button. Normally, this triggers decapitation, stomps, and other hyper-violent attacks, but in this instance, he can use it to hug his wife and child. Doing this drains Kratos' own health, but restores theirs. But that's just the first game. Take Chains of Olympus, a spin-off game, where Kratos releases all of his sins into a tree to be able to visit his daughter in Elysium, represented by him draining his health, magic, and abilities in a similar way to how it worked in God of War 2, and also taking his weapons away. But, since Kratos can't have nice things, it turns out that if he stays with his daughter, a renegade god will destroy everything, including said daughter. Now the button mashing QTE normally used for busting down heavy doors or repeatedly stabbing someone is instead used to push his daughter away while she cries for him to stay. Then, to gain back all the power he gave up, you have to run around killing the defenseless spirits in Elysium, manually turning himself back into the monster that has the power to defend his daughter. In another spin-off, Ghost of Sparta, Kratos reunites with his brother. The new God of War reboot has its somewhat infamous sun button, but Ghost of Sparta did it first. Kratos gives his original Spartan spear and shield to his brother Deimos, and he fights alongside him in the final battle. The button used to switch to that weapon instead becomes a signal to have Deimos help you in various ways. But again, Kratos isn't allowed to be happy and Deimos is killed. And at the end of the game, you're put in manual control of Kratos as you carry his brother's corpse to a grave. God of War 3 honestly has so many cool little things I'd probably have to make a whole video just for that, but I don't want to oversell it. God of War isn't a deep game or the pinnacle of storytelling. It's simple, and that's what makes it effective. These tiny but sharp contrasts to the bloodbaths that make up the rest of the game already stand out, but by tying them to mechanics rather than showing them in cutscenes, they become the responsibility of you, the player. It removes a barrier between the player and the story in a way that only games can, and the fact that they do this so often and so well shows it's not an accident. God of War knows it's a game, and it knows how to use it.